Hello everyone, welcome to IAS Shaashtra. I'm Rajvardhan Bordekar and today we are going to discuss about environment and ecology, some previous year questions that will help you understand the approach for this particular subject. Let us start with the video. Before we go to the discussion of previous year questions, let us go through the syllabus of environment and ecology given by UPSC for both prelims as well as mains. Prelims में यूपीएससी ने सिलेबस दिया है और जिसमें मेंशन है जनरल इश्यूज ऑन एनवायरमेंटल इकोलॉजी, बायोडाइवर्सिटी, क्लाइमेट चेंज दैट डू नॉट रिक्वायर सब्जेक्ट स्पेशलाइजेशन. सो वी कैन से दैट three topics are there. First is environmental ecology, second is biodiversity, third is climate change. Next, in the main syllabus they have given topics like conservation, environmental pollution and degradation and एनवायरमेंटल इंपैक्ट असेसमेंट. सो ये 6 टॉपिक दिए हैं यूपीएससी ने सिलेबस में जो हमें इंपॉर्टेंट है एग्जाम्स पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू, और इसी वजह से हम इन टॉपिक्स का डिटेल एनालिसिस करेंगे, प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चंस देखेंगे इन टॉपिक में से, और ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ दैट इट वुड हेल्प यू अंडरस्टैंड द अप्रोच दैट यू हैव टू फॉलो फॉर दिस पर्टिकुलर सब्जेक्ट. लेट अस स्टार्ट विथ environmental ecology. First topic is environmental ecology. Now, what should be the subtopics that you should focus on? Here, you should focus firstly on basics of environment, right? And under basics of environment, there are levels of ecological organization. Those levels are important, like the level of individual, then population, then community, then ecosystem, then biomes and biosphere. Last is biosphere. तो ये 6 लेवल्स है जिसपे हम environment and ecology सब्जेक्ट को पढ़ सकते हैं, and these 6 levels are important that will help you understand the subject. And amongst these 6 levels, UPSC has asked number of questions on ecosystem and biomes. Next है ecosystem और biomes. Ecosystem का structure, ecosystem के functions like functions related to the biogeochemical cycles, functions related to energy flow. All those functions are important. And then different types of biomes. डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ बायोम्स जिसमें वर्ल्ड के बायोम्स भी आएंगे और इंडिया के बायोम्स भी आएंगे, और ये टॉपिक प्राइमरीली इंपॉर्टेंट है प्रीलिम्स के पर्सपेक्टिव से. तो अब हम इस टॉपिक से रिलेटेड प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चन को एनालाइज करेंगे. फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन दैट विल एनालाइज इज डिफाइन द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ कैरिंग कैपेसिटी ऑफ एन इकोसिस्टम as relevant to an environment. Explain how understanding of this concept is vital while planning for the sustainable development of a region. Right? So this question is on carrying capacity of an ecosystem. Now, इस क्वेश्चन को हम अप्रोच कैसे करेंगे? Firstly, introduction में will define what exactly do we mean by carrying capacity. कैरिंग कैपेसिटी का मतलब क्या है? सो कैरिंग कैपेसिटी मीन्स द नंबर ऑफ इंडिविजुअल्स ऑफ ए पर्टिकुलर पॉपुलेशन दैट कैन बी सस्टेन्ड बाय एन इकोसिस्टम विदाउट लूजिंग इट्स एबिलिटी टू रिप्लेनिश इट्स रिसोर्सेस. राइट? कितने लोग एक इकोसिस्टम में रह सकते हैं, एंड व्हेन दे आर लिविंग दे विल बी यूजिंग द रिसोर्सेस. Those resources need to be replenished, and that is also one of the important components of carrying capacity of an ecosystem. So that way we can define this particular ecosystem, and the ecosystem definition is being asked from the perspective of environment. Right? Here you can take example as well. Let's say example of Himalayas. Himalayas being mountainous and fragile ecosystem will have limited carrying capacity, and that's why the development that we carry out of Himalayas, the population that is allowed to settle in Himalayas should be on the basis of its carrying capacity. Now, in the body part, क्वेश्चन हमें पूछ रहा है, explain how understanding of this concept is vital while planning for sustainable development of a region. Right? So why this concept is important for understanding or for sustainable development? This is important to make sure that development is in sync with the carrying capacity. In sync with the carrying capacity. For example, the approach that is followed for the development of plains will not be an approach that we would be able to follow for Himalayan ecosystem, and hence we should be aware of the carrying capacity of Himalayan ecosystem, and on the basis of that carrying capacity we should design an approach that need to be followed in Himalayan ecosystem. जब हम ये करेंगे, जब हम किसी भी एरिया की डेवलपमेंट उसके कैरिंग कैपेसिटी के अकॉर्डिंग करेंगे, तो एनवायरमेंटल डिग्रेडेशन हम रोक पाएंगे. एनवायरमेंटल डिग्रेडेशन can be avoided, right? And when we avoid environmental degradation, that means we are protecting not only green cover, we are also protecting habitat of that particular area, of the living organisms living in that area. We are also making sure that the livelihood of people dependent on that ecosystem is also protected. Right? And once we follow this kind of approach for one ecosystem, that would also help us conserve that ecosystem in a holistic manner. And this approach need to be replicated in other ecosystems. That would help us to stop environmental degradation across the globe, which is very important in today's context. Right? And then in conclusion, what we can write? So in order to carry out development according to carrying capacity of an ecosystem, there is one measure that should be implemented, and that measure is of EIA. For any project, environmental clearance should be issued only after carrying out environmental impact assessment, because under environmental impact assessment we try to understand probable impacts of a project in that area, and if we are aware of carrying capacity and on the basis of that carrying capacity we are carrying out EIA, the projects coming up in that area would be more environment friendly projects, right? So that is what is the approach that you should follow for this question. Now there are questions that are being asked from environmental ecology topic even in the prelims examination, and this is that question asked in 22's prelims examination, and the question is related to nitrogen fixing plants. Nitrogen fixing plants come under a topic of nitrogen cycle. They come under a topic of nitrogen cycle. Right? So these are the questions that are asked from environmental ecology. Now second topic is biodiversity and its conservation. So here it is important to know about the levels of biodiversity. Levels are genetic diversity. 3 levels are there. First is genetic diversity, second is species diversity, and third is ecosystem diversity. One should be aware of all these 3 levels in detail. Next, importance of biodiversity. Biodiversity provides us various goods and services. Those goods and services are important from the survival of human beings perspective. We are directly dependent on biodiversity goods and services. Be it any good or services that we are using in our daily life, that is coming only from biodiversity, and that is the importance of it, right? But what has happened, given the dependence of human beings on biodiversity and its resources, we are exploiting those resources, and that is leading to different kind of threats. Threats are like habitat loss and fragmentation, pollution, then introduction of invasive alien species, then over exploitation of the resources, global warming, climate change, all these are the threats posed to biodiversity. And as these threats are posed by human beings, it is our responsibility to carry out conservation of biodiversity. And for that, where various efforts have been initiated, like at international level, there is one effort for biodiversity conservation, and that is called as UNCBD, United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity. Then at the Indian level, we have a number of acts like the Biodiversity Act BDA 2002. This is being amended recently. Amendments of 2023. Amendments of 2020. They are also important. Right. So these type of topics are important under biodiversity and conservation. Now, which questions are being asked by UPSC? So first question is from 2018's mains examination. What is a wetland? Explain the Ramsar concept of wise use in the context of wetland conservation. Cite 2 examples of Ramsar sites from India. Now, though this question means it appears that it is from static syllabus, but Ramsar Convention is in news every now and then, and UPSC get inspired from these type of topics which are there in news, and they ask those topics related to the news, but they link it with the static part, right? So here wetlands, their wise use, and 2 examples. 3 parts are there. You should be aware of all those 3 parts, right? What are wetlands? Wetlands are those ecosystems where prime factor that determines the characteristic is water, right? They may be shallow ecosystem, they may be deep ecosystem, but wetlands are those areas where water is a prime factor that determines their characteristic. Then wise use of wetlands. Wise use of wetland is that use which does not alter its ecological characteristic. That means dumping of waste, encroachment in the wetlands, pollution, harming catchment area of wetlands. All these practices will not be considered as wise use, right? Wise use is to protect ecological characteristic of wetland. And then 2 examples of Ramsar sites should be quoted. It is better to quote current examples of Ramsar sites and explain a bit about those Ramsar sites. So that way you should be able to approach this particular question. Next question is, how does biodiversity vary in India? How is the Biological Diversity Act 2002 helpful in the conservation of flora and fauna? Right. So in this particular question, in the introductory part, as they are asking you to discuss biodiversity variation in India, you can write about the definition of biodiversity. Right. Also, you can mention that India, being a biodiversity hotspot, has different type of biodiversity. That biodiversity you can mention in the first part of body as biogeographical zones of India. There are 10 biogeographical zones of India, like Trans-Himalayas, Himalayas, coastal, semi-arid, arid, Deccan interiors, islands, all those areas you will be able to explain here. And then in the second part, you are asked about BDA, Biodiversity Act 2002. How does it help in the conservation of biodiversity? This act is enacted in India to implement United Nations Convention on Biodiversity Conservation. So if it is implemented in India through this act, we are making sure that biodiversity is conserved, and also we are taking care of biosafety in this case, because under Biodiversity Act of 2002, we are trying to protect biodiversity from genetically modified organisms as well, right? And then conclusion, wherein we can mention about the steps that are needed to conserve biodiversity in a better way. Though we have these acts for the protection of biodiversity, their implementation is lacking. And for their better implementation, it is important to take local stakeholders along with the forest department, then only we will be able to conserve biodiversity in a proper manner. Then only we'll be able to implement these initiatives in their letter and spirit, right? So that is how you can approach this particular question. Now, there are questions from this particular topic in prelims examination as well. This question is about wetlands on one hand and location of those wetlands on other, and we are supposed to find out which pairs are correctly matched. Again, this is current affairs based question because all these areas, all these protected areas, all these wetlands were in news in this particular year when this question was asked. Next question is protected areas located in Kaveri Basin. Now, this is again an important aspect. Protected areas, different species have been asked by UPSC in number of prelims examination. Almost every year, at least one question would be there from protected areas, and hence, apart from having a conceptual clarity of static portion, you should also collect information about the factual aspects like protected areas in news, different flagship species in news, and in case is there any initiative started by government of states or government of India, those initiatives also you should be aware of, right? Next topic is climate change. Now, climate change is mentioned in the prelims syllabus. Under this climate change topic, what are different subtopics that you should study? Firstly, you should be aware of meaning of climate change. What do we mean by climate change exactly? It is the change that is occurring in temperature, rainfall, humidity, wind speed, wind direction, etc. due to human actions. Especially these days, climate change is the result of human action. Then causes of climate change, both natural as well as anthropogenic causes. Then greenhouse effect, greenhouse gases, different sources of greenhouse gases, their global warming potential you should be aware of. Then ozone layer depletion is also one of the important facets of climate change. That is also important from the exam's perspective. Impact of climate change on various aspects of life, impact on agriculture, impact on water resources, impact on health, impact on different ecosystem you should be aware of. And then the mitigation of climate change, because often these impacts are due to the climate change that is occurring because of human aspects, and that's why we human beings would be able to take care of this through mitigation of climate change, wherein we try to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases, thereby we would be able to reduce the impact of the global warming and climate change. And lastly, IPCC and the reports given by IPCC. IPCC is one of the important bodies, important organizations established in 1988 by United Nations Environment Program and World Meteorological Organization. It comes up with reports, and those reports help us understand climate change. Our understanding of climate change, be it causes of climate change, impacts of climate change, and probable solutions, are all based on the reports given by IPCC. Next, what are the questions that UPSC has asked from climate change topic? So in 2021, there was one question on the outcomes of COP held in 2021. 26 COP was held in 2021, and that was the COP of Glasgow. UPSC has asked outcomes of that COP. So this is a pure current affairs question, and this is what we will be catering in IAS Shaashtra. IAS Shaashtra में सिर्फ स्टैटिक सिलेबस का कवरेज नहीं किया जाएगा. स्टैटिक सिलेबस उसके साथ करंट अफेयर्स का कवरेज भी इंपॉर्टेंट है, and that we will do in IAS Shaashtra. Not only coverage of syllabus, there would be test series that would help you apply the knowledge, apply the information that you collect through the different sources in answer writing, because it is more about application of information that you have. So वो सारी चीजें हम IAS शास्त्रा में आपको प्रोवाइड करेंगे, right? So और इस क्वेश्चन में दूसरा पार्ट था, what are the commitments made by India in this conference? So COP 26 में इंडिया ने इंडिसेस को अपग्रेड किया था, नेशनली डिटरमाइंड कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशंस वर अपग्रेडेड एंड दोज अपग्रेडेड इंडिसेस आर कॉल्ड एज पंचामृत. Panchamrit, and UPSC has asked question on the Panchamrit as well, right? So ये था एक क्वेश्चन क्लाइमेट चेंज के ऊपर जो 2021 के मेंस एग्जाम में पूछा गया. उसके बाद नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन है क्लाइमेट चेंज इज ए ग्लोबल प्रॉब्लम, हाउ विल इंडिया बी अफेक्टेड बाय क्लाइमेट चेंज, हाउ विल हिमालयन एंड कोस्टल स्टेट्स ऑफ इंडिया विल बी अफेक्टेड बाय क्लाइमेट चेंज, राइट? सो तीन पार्ट है इस क्वेश्चन में. फर्स्ट पार्ट है climate change is a global problem. So here you'll have to substantiate this statement. आप इस statement को कैसे substantiate कर सकते हैं? By highlighting examples. You can highlight examples of, let's say, forest fires occurring in Europe, heat wave conditions in USA and Canada, then cloudburst events, floods, droughts that are occurring in India, and even the droughts, forest fires occurring in Australia. All these aspects, all these examples tell us that yes, climate change is a global problem. So that you have substantiated in your introductory part. Now, body part में आपको क्या करना है? Body part में आपको climate change के जो इंडिया के ऊपर impact है, general impacts, not any specific, general impacts on agriculture, water resources, health, then what will be the impact on different ecosystem, वो सारे इंपैक्ट्स आपको यहां पे मेंशन करने हैं. और उसके बाद थर्ड पार्ट में आपको मेंशन करना है इंपैक्ट ऑन हिमालयन एंड कोस्टल स्टेट्स स्पेसिफिकली. यहां पे आपको स्पेसिफिक हिमालयन स्टेट्स और कोस्टल स्टेट्स पे जो इंपैक्ट्स है वो मेंशन करना है, राइट? सो दैट इज व्हाट द क्वेश्चन वाज आस्क्ड इन 2017 मेंस एग्जामिनेशन, राइट? और ये एक क्वेश्चन है क्लाइमेट चेंज के ऊपर जो प्रीलिम्स में पूछा गया था. And the question is related to geoengineering. This question is related to geoengineering. It is one of the strategies that can be followed for climate change mitigation. Geoengineering can be used for climate change mitigation. Right? ये क्वेश्चन पूछा गया था यूपीएससी द्वारा प्रीलिम्स एग्जाम. नेक्स्ट नाउ, सो अगला टॉपिक है एनवायरमेंटल पोल्यूशन एंड डिग्रेडेशन. इसमें हमें किन चीजों पे फोकस करना है? इसमें हमें बेसिक्स ऑफ पोल्यूशन जानने हैं, मतलब पोल्यूशन की डेफिनेशन क्या है, डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ पोल्यूशन कौन से है. ऑल्सो यू शुड बी अवेयर ऑफ पोल्यूटेंट्स. देयर आर डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ पोल्यूटेंट्स एंड द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट टाइप ऑफ पोल्यूटेंट इज प्राइमरी एंड सेकेंडरी पोल्यूटेंट्स. Primary and secondary pollutants. This you should be aware of. उसके बाद various types of pollution. उनके क्या causes है, उनके impacts क्या है और solutions क्या है. गवर्नमेंट ने कौन से steps लिए हैं for the protection of environmental aspect from those pollution. For example, to take care of air pollution, the government of India has enacted one act in 1981. And that act is the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. Water pollution control करने के लिए एक act है the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974. और बहुत सारे rules दिए हैं. For example, the Solid Waste Management Rules of 2016, the E-Waste Management Rules of 2016 and 2022, the Plastic Waste Management Rules of 2021, 2022. All those rules are important from the exam's perspective and they can be put under the category of solutions. अगला टॉपिक है लैंड डिग्रेडेशन. लैंड डिग्रेडेशन के कॉजेज क्या है, इंपैक्ट्स क्या है और सॉल्यूशन क्या है. एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट सॉल्यूशन लैंड डिग्रेडेशन के लिए है और वो है UNCCD, मतलब यूनाइटेड नेशंस कन्वेंशन ऑन कॉम्बैटिंग डेजर्टिफिकेशन, राइट? सो ऑल दीज टॉपिक्स आर इंपॉर्टेंट फ्रॉम द एग्जाम्स पर्सपेक्टिव. अभी हम एनवायरमेंटल पोल्यूशन और लैंड डिग्रेडेशन पे यूपीएससी ने कौन से क्वेश्चन पूछे हैं ये देखें. एक क्वेश्चन पूछा था 2021 के मेंस एग्जाम में एंड दिस क्वेश्चन अगेन इज प्योर करंट अफेयर्स बिकॉज इन 2021 WHO came up with updated guidelines for air quality and those guidelines were asked by UPSC in 2021's मेंस एग्जामिनेशन. नाउ सिर्फ ये गाइडलाइंस जानना जरूरी नहीं, उसका बैकग्राउंड हमें देखना पड़ेगा, because those guidelines were an updation over the guidelines that WHO gave in 2005. ये एस्पेक्ट भी यूपीएससी ने पूछा था इस क्वेश्चन में, ना कि सिर्फ 2021 के गाइडलाइंस, 2005 के गाइडलाइंस से 2021 के गाइडलाइन कैसे अलग है ये भी पूछा था. एंड देन देयर इज वन मोर, व्हाट चेंजेस in India's national clean air program are required to achieve these revised standards. Right? एक प्रोग्राम गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने स्टार्ट किया है, उस प्रोग्राम का नाम है नेशनल क्लीन एयर प्रोग्राम. ये 2019 में स्टार्ट किया गया था और इसका ऑब्जेक्टिव है टू रिड्यूस पार्टिकुलेट मैटर पोल्यूशन बाय 20 to 30% बाय 2024. लेकिन इसको अपडेट करके 40% रिडक्शन किया गया है 2026 तक. तो इस प्रोग्राम में हमें क्या चेंजेस करने होंगे so that we'll be able to implement the updated guidelines given by WHO, that has also been asked here. And then last question is, what are the impediments in disposing of the huge quantities of discarded solid waste which are continuously being generated? How do we remove safely the toxic waste that have been accumulating in our habitable environment? So ये क्वेश्चन है सॉलिड वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट पे, और सुप्रीम कोर्ट ऑफ इंडिया ने सॉलिड वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट के बारे में कहा था, सॉलिड वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट इज ए टाइम बॉम्ब टिकिंग ओवर इंडियन सिटीज, एंड द क्वेश्चन इज ऑन दैट सॉलिड वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट ओनली. अगला क्वेश्चन प्रीलिम्स एग्जाम से है और इसमें हमें पूछा गया था मीथेन और नाइट्रोजन ऑक्साइड का सोर्स कौन सा क्रॉप है, एंड इट इज राइस. राइट, सो सिंपल क्वेश्चन था ये पूछा था 2022 के प्रीलिम्स एग्जाम में. और उसके बाद एक क्वेश्चन है एसिड रेन पे. ये क्वेश्चन भी 2022 के एग्जाम में, प्रीलिम्स एग्जाम में पूछा था. और एसिड रेन के कौन से गैसेस कॉज होते हैं? इट इज नाइट्रोजन ऑक्साइड एंड सल्फर डाइऑक्साइड. आंसर शुड बी 2 and 4. राइट, so that is the question from pollution and land degradation. Last topic है environmental impact assessment, EIA. यहां पे सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट है इसका कॉन्सेप्ट. What exactly do we mean by EIA? So as per the United Nations Environment Program, EIA is a tool. EIA is a tool to understand future impacts of the project before it starts, so that we can make that project more environment friendly. Right? Then importance of EIA. EIA का क्या importance है? EIA will make sure that the development that is being carried out is sustainable development. Then steps followed in EIA, and lastly EIA notifications. Right now we have EIA notification of 2006 in force. In 2020 draft EIA notification was given, but that was not passed ultimately. One question was asked on EIA in 2020's examination, means examination, and that was related to draft EIA notification of 2020 and how it differs from the EIA notification of 2006. Right? So EIA एक ऐसा टॉपिक है जो completely मेंस ओरिएंटेड टॉपिक है. इसमें प्रीलिम्स में अभी तक क्वेश्चन पूछा नहीं गया है. Right? So that is what is the question from EIA. So with this we can conclude our session of environment and ecology related to previous year questions and the approach that you should follow for this particular syllabus and this particular subject. Thank you.